Right, and we're off again. So, continuing our theme of whiskies that have been donated to me, just to kind of start me off. When I was working at the whisky shop in the centre of York, basically when the store opened, I was running it from the opening. I had a whale of a time, absolutely loved it, miss it to bits. But when it opened, there were directly opposite the store was a Starbucks, and we used to get on with the guys really well. Basically, used to go over there, drop them a couple of like samples of a particular whiskey. We used to get frappuccinos in return. Everybody was happy. At the end of the day, when everybody was closing up, nip across with a couple of shots, come back with a big coffee or a frappuccino or whatever, have a bit of a crack on, happy days, absolutely fantastic. Now there was a guy there that worked at the Starbucks called Ollie, and he was into whiskey. He used to come over, have a chat, then go back to work, then come over again, have a bit of a chat, back to work, finish his shift, maybe have a shot before he went home. He lived in the centre of York, so he used to walk home. And after a while, he was spending more and more time in my shop than he was in Starbucks. He used to get shouted at across the street for the fact that he was spending more time with us than he was when he should have been working. So I just turned around and went, do you know what, you're spending that much time here, I might as well pay you and employ you. So he ended up working for me, and he was brilliant, loved the stuff, picked it up like that, really keen on it, really interested, very, very good customers, top bloke, really, really nice. And then he ended up moving down to London and got a job working for the Whisky Exchange. Now the Whisky Exchange is one of the top whisky shops in the country. They're based down in London, but they've got a fantastic online presence. And he basically got a job with them and is, but as far as I'm aware, living at large in London, having an absolute whale of a time. So when I gave him a shout to say, I'm thinking about doing this challenge, he was the one I went to say, is this feasible? A, is this healthy? And B, is it feasible? Do you think I can actually do this? Can I get 366 different whiskies in a year and sample them all? And fortunately, he went, yeah, I think can. So this big box turned up a couple of weeks later, and it was full of packing peanuts, but inside were tiny, tiny little bottles like this with samples in, about 20 of them. So I'm rooting through and I'm trying not to tip the whole thing out because I could just imagine one of them falling on the floor, and it's like all these little gems inside this big packing peanuts of all these samples that he sent. Absolutely brilliant. Ollie, mate, superstar, really, really good. I couldn't ask for more. Incredibly generous, and he's been generous before. He's helped me out with a couple of whiskey tastings for earning money for my school and things like that, and I would like to think that I am partly the reason why he is where he is at the Whisky Exchange, but his enthusiasm, his skill, his talent, he deserves it. He deserves all of it. So the one that I'm going to do now, this is the first one of his that I've sampled, and this is one called Port Askaig, or it's probably Port Askaig or something, some Gaelic pronunciation. That almost sounded Spanish, didn't it? Now this is an Islay whiskey, but it's a mystery Islay whiskey. Technically I'm breaking the rules because this is a bottling of a single malt Islay whiskey from one of the others, and if I do one of the other distilleries, I may well be drinking the same whiskey from this distillery, but I'm also looking at different brands because different brands can use whiskies from other distilleries. Like independent bottlers will buy stock from distilleries and say, do you know what, we want to do this particular cask, or we want to do a particular wood finish, just to try something different, to try and give you a different version of what this particular distillery is like. But sometimes to do that, you have to do a deal with the distiller to say, right, what I'll do is I will buy this stock off you, I will do what I want to it, I will bottle it, I will then sell it, but I won't put your name on it, because some of these distilleries or some of the companies that own the distilleries don't want it known that you can get their stock or their whiskey in another form, which might be cheaper or might be much better or might be much more interesting, and you want them to buy your product, not what somebody else is doing. For example, supermarkets have their own labels. Marks and Spencer's have their own whiskies. They don't make that whiskey. They buy it from somebody else and they bottle it with their own labels on, and they will have it as a single malt whiskey because that's what it is, but they'll put a different name on it and call it something else to make it sound interesting or traditional, or maybe give a clue as to where it's from. But they're not making it themselves, they're buying it in. Now, I'm just going to pick a name out of a hat and say Lagavulin. Not saying that they are, they may be, but I'm not saying that they are in this point of contact. But Marks and Spencer's have an Islay whiskey that they call Marks and Spencer's Islay. I'm not that imaginative at the moment, but they buy stock from Lagavulin and they bottle it up and they put their own label on it and they say this is Marks and Spencer's own Islay whiskey, and they sell it at £20 a bottle. Now Lagavulin sells at £50 a bottle, but Marks and Spencer's has done a deal. It means that they can sell a load of their whiskey stock to Marks and Spencer's every year. They know they've got a good customer, they can sell it at a good rate and still make a profit. Marks and Spencer's aren't looking at a massive markup. They can sell it at a decent price, which means that loads of people will buy it. All they have to do is just not put "this is from Lagavulin" on the label. It's not mismarketing, but it is kind of distorting the truth, and it can be confusing for some people who are looking at the label and going like, let's call it, what could we call it? I'm trying to think of a thing now. The smoky one, you know, or Smokeness, for example. They call it Smokeness, and somebody there go, oh, I didn't know there was a Smokeness distillery on Islay. Let's go and have a look. Or you look on a map, or you do a bit of digging, and you go, well, there's no such thing as Smokeness, and it's clouding the information. But kind of that's how these independent bottlers work. Now, Port Askaig, as I say, is an Islay whiskey, but it's actually, Port Askaig's being produced by a guy called Sukhinder Singh, who has basically selected specific stocks in limited batches because he's trying to give, it's kind of marketing at novice drinkers that want an introduction into Islay whiskey, but that's still got complexity and depth that will satisfy experienced whiskey drinkers. Now, Sukhinder Singh, conveniently enough, is also the founder of the Whisky Exchange, who Ollie works for, so there's no surprise that he put one of these in. Sukhinder Singh basically was, him and his brother in the 80s were helping their parents run a wine business in London, and in 1999 his parents decided to quit the business, and Sukhinder and his brother made the decision to basically sell the business up and then start the Whisky Exchange. Now, Sukhinder started collecting miniatures in the mid-80s, then went to full bottles, and basically by the mid-90s had such a huge whiskey collection that it was almost a case of, I've got this many bottles in, fuck it, I'll open a shop. Essentially, he probably didn't say exactly that because he seems far too much of a gentleman for that, but it's essentially that. He was a collector, he was a fan, he collected that many bottles. It was like, I've got so many, we'll open a shop, and that's why it's called the Whisky Exchange. It was for him and whiskey fans to swap bottles, exchange bottles, buy, sell, everything like that. It's a massive business now. It's really popular. It's one of the best places to get whiskey from. The staff are really knowledgeable. I should know. I trained one of them up. But he also knows what he's talking about. That doesn't really put him in a good light, does it? The fact that I trained him. But they're a fantastic business. And what Sukhinder's doing here is basically selecting stock from an Islay distillery, or maybe a couple of different Islay distilleries for each version that he's got, and basically trying to give you an introduction. So, at the moment, there are 4 versions of Port Askaig. There's a 17-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 30-year-old, and this one, which is kind of their entry level, which is cask strength. So, Ollie has written, and you might be able to see, where's the camera? There it is. That says Port Askaig 100 proof. Now, this is 100 proof, UK proof, so it's 57.1% ABV. So, I'm going to get some water. Because it might want a little dash in. Now, out the fridge, it's filtered. It's going to be cold, so it might affect the flavour, but it's not ice. I must point that out. It's not ice, so it's not going to be cold enough to kind of freeze the taste buds on my tongue or affect the way that I'm going to taste it. I've also got a little syringe, Calpol syringe, because that was the only thing I could find. Because I've got a feeling at 57.1 I will need to add some water in, but maybe not necessarily. Classic Islay on the nose, really medicinal, really iodine-y. There is bonfire smoke in there, but it's more that kind of medicine, dentist, doctors, anaesthetic, that sort of hospital feel to it. Now, some people that sort of description would really put them off, but on the nose, it's so full on. It's just like, it's amazing to think that there isn't that much smells available in such a liquid. Very, very light colour though. I don't know if you can see how light that is, but really, really light. Now there's a really nice sweetness to it, surprisingly so considering how light that is. But it's not a caramel sweetness, it's almost sugary, it's like candy floss sweetness to it. And considering that's 57.1, no burn whatsoever. A little bit more there, a little bit more at the back of the throat. In fact, that's hit the back of my throat and then gone back up my nose. Really prickly, lingering, peaty flavour, kind of slightly earthy, again iodine, that kind of fresh euthynyl feel as well. Euthynyl is always the one that I go back to because it's so evocative to me. There's sea air in there, there's kind of salt and vinegar and fish and chips sort of feel, very, very concentrated. That's very, very good. That didn't hit me on the back of the throat that time. That is excellent. Now I am going to add a little bit of water. My fear is that it's actually going to the water's going to weaken the flavours that are there because it's very delicate, surprisingly delicate for such intensity. Very, very nice stuff though. I'm very impressed with this. Now this has got no age statement in. Judging by the colour, I'd say it's really young, but because of the complexity that's in there, I'm not sure there is. I think there's a combination of ages in here, I'm almost certain. I'm just going to put a couple of drops in. Only needs a couple. Now this is filtered out of the fridge as well, so there's no gunk out there from Yorkshire water, because God knows what's in that. So on the nose, everything's softened a little bit because we've got those drops of water in. Again, it was like 4 drops, it really didn't need to take a lot. And obviously there's not a lot left in the glass as well. My fear, I might have put a bit too much in it, maybe I only needed 2 drops. Everything's softened out, it's less at the back of the nose. It has probably just diluted it slightly. I think I got it just about right. All the flavours that are there are still there. There's not the prickle at the back of the throat, there's not the kick at the back of the throat. There's still this waves of smokiness, peatiness. There is this sweetness. That candy floss has maybe disappeared a little bit, which really surprised me to start with. Very, very good. For a novice Isla drinker, it's a good introduction. It's still got those flavours that potentially will put somebody off. But all in all, it's a cracking jam. You're looking at about 45 quid here. But this is something special. This is something really good. Port Askaig is actually a village on the northeast coast, and I'm going to put a map up of it now of where it is. But it's a very good introduction. We are really intrigued to see what the 17, 25 and 30 are like, because they're going to be something special. Sakinder knows what he's doing. He's picked some quality whiskey here. It doesn't necessarily need water, even at 57.1%. Ollie, really appreciate that, mate. That is an absolute cracker. Really, really liking that. And I look forward to trying the other ones that you sent me. Cheers. See you later.